Representative Erin Davis, the Republican, versus Paul McCorkle, the Democrat. And the first candidate up will be Paul McCorkle. And you will have 1 minute for your opening remarks.
I'm a high school teacher. So, if you've ever taught school or been around a whole bunch of people that have the same questions, by the time you get to the middle, it's hard to come up with new things to say. So, I will try real hard to change it up a little bit. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I'm a teacher. I work with special ed kids. I was asked to run. Someone heard me speak and said, you know, we need someone who's going to stand up and deal with the situation that we have. The challenges that we have in Kansas. I graduated from Olathe North. My youngest daughter is a freshman there. My oldest one goes to KU and also graduated from Olathe North. So I said, I came home, asked my family. They said, yeah, you should do that. I went and asked my school district and said, can I take that time off if I win? And they said, no, you can't. If you win, you're gonna have to break contract. That means I won't be employed next fall. So I came home and I told my wife and my daughters that, and I said, you still think I should do this? And they said, yeah. And I said, okay, that means this is a family decision. So if I win, next fall, I may come to some of you and ask you if I can have a job because but that's the devotion that I have to this. That's what I bring.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. The first question for 1 minute. What are your views on the budget and state tax policy? Are there tax or spending policies that you would add or change? And please be specific.
Once again, coming up with something new, right? Obviously, our tax policy isn't working, period. My high school kids can figure that out. They say, wait a minute, we just heard that Kansas, and these are Missouri kids, Kansas is short again. And I said, yeah, and I said, hey, let's read the newspaper today, and it says that we're gonna actually have a commission that says we're going to redo the way we estimate how much money we're taking in, and then we're not going to share it if we don't make it. My kid said, that makes no sense. I said, I'll elect you. We have to repeal what has happened. We have to close the LLC loophole, but that only gets you so far. If you're only talking LLC loophole, that's 61 million for this year. We're already 66 in the hole. You have to look at the entirety of the whole tax process and come back to a ground zero to where we are paying for what we expect. I don't expect craziness, but I expect to be able to pay for what we get.
Okay, next question. Again, for 1 minute, what are your views on K-12 education funding in Kansas? How do you envision a new school finance formula? And would it include school vouchers, individual tax credits, or other voucher-like programs for private school tuition?
Okay, no vouchers. I'll just take that one off. Second, I spent yesterday with the Kansas Department of Education and the Kansas School Boards Association actually working on this. I was invited along with all of the other candidates, and there were no incumbents there. I sat at a table with the superintendent of Blue Valley, school board member of Blue Valley, Ron Reichman, myself, and a couple other people, and I had a discussion with them about how you fund education. You're going to need to bring together your stakeholders, all of the people that are involved, and you're going to need to listen. The people in Topeka have said, this is how you run a school. I listened to the school board member tell me that as a teacher, I should listen to what business wants. And I said, you know, you should be at the table. But I know what it takes to teach a kid. I know what it takes to teach a special ed kid. And we want to make them all successful. So I'm going to bring them all together, and then we're going to fully fund our education. But we can't do that until we fix our tax stream. We know that.
Okay, next question. For 1 minute, in recent years, the legislature has diverted funding dedicated to the state's transportation program to pay for other purposes. Do you support dedicating sales tax revenue to specific purposes, such as transportation? Or do you support all state expenditures, including transportation, should be subject to the appropriations process where legislators determine the funding levels entirely?
Being a teacher, I had to go learn stuff. This is some of the stuff I had to go learn. And looked at the numbers, looked at the fact that Kansas not only has been moving money that they said that they were going to spend in transportation, and though we're really good at upkeep, our bridges are ranked 6th worst in the nation. We've also tried to move other money. Something that Chris Morrow referred to was the money that we receive from the tobacco findings goes into early childhood education. And we tried to securitize that money so that we could pull that money out of early childhood so that we could plug the holes in our budget. It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that just goes into common sense. Yeah, if we're saying we're going to put it there, we put it there. That's where I stand on that.
All right. Next question for 1 minute.
You totally need to wave that at me because I'm doing really bad at that.
Good to know. What are your views on local control, including recent legislation limiting local government property tax revenues without a public vote?
Leetta Felter, who's a school board member here in Olathe, sent out a questionnaire, and she actually asked that question, and she wanted to know from all the candidates. And I responded to it in the way I look at the world. I'm a history teacher, so I look at things much farther back than just the last 4 years. And I responded to her, you know, it's a balance. And she was actually kind of surprised. She wrote back to me, we had a great dialogue about it. I said, because I can tell you times when federal and state overreach was incredibly important. I said, I can talk about civil rights, I can talk about voting rights, I can talk about these sorts of things. So I can't stand up here myself and give you a straight up, I'm gonna give, I would say, everything should always be in one place. I am always going to come back to the place where I'm going to say, we have to look at the greater good and do the best that we can. I would not turn that around. When it comes to how we will spend money, I would always love to have it as close to the people as possible. But there are times that I've looked at that I teach my kids where it took someone else to say, hey, we need to change this.
And the final question, what is the most important thing that distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
Education. I am a special ed teacher. My first classroom was a kindergarten class in KCK. I walked into kindergarten roundup the fall before, or the spring before, and all of these parents were sitting there with little 5-year-olds, and they all had this look on their face like, there's no way you're going to be our kindergarten teacher. And I told them it was fine. It would be totally fine. Just give me a couple weeks with your kids and you'd understand. I looped with their kids so that they had me for 2 years. This is what I do. This is my passion. I'm completing my doctorate in educational leadership. I work to take care of children, not just my kids, but all the kids that I can be involved with. People have asked me, how long do I want to be, is this what I always wanted to do? I wanted to run for office. My answer was no. When I grow up, I'm going to be an elementary school principal, and I'm going to get to go back and be with those kindergarten kids. I want to do this, help make this better, and move on and let someone else do it.
All right, thank you very much. Is Representative Erin Davis. You have 1 minute for opening remarks.
Thank you. First, I want to welcome all of you to Olathe in the 15th District. This is my home where I have grown up. I want to thank Natalie Bright and Tim McKee and the Olathe Chamber for hosting this really important event. And it's really awesome to see so many people interested in what we have to say as candidates. And I appreciate all being here. I've called Olathe my home since 1978. My parents and I moved to 2 Trails 1112 Layton Drive. It's just a few blocks north of here. When we moved into that house, I was an only child, and I could have never imagined that in just a few years' time, I would be big sister to 2 brothers, and a few years later, I would be the mom to 2 14-year-olds. And fast forward even a few years past then, and I would represent not only my hometown of Olathe, but the actual neighborhood where I grew up. And it's an awesome responsibility, and it's an even more awesome honor.
First question. What are your views on the budget and state tax policy? Are there tax or spending policies that you would add or change? And please be specific.
Thank you for that question. This is probably the thing that I've spent the most time in my short time in the legislature working on. I was not in office in 2012, first of all, and I know that there's some information out there that says I'm responsible for the 2012 tax plan, which is really interesting because I wasn't in office. But I've worked tirelessly since my time in office to repeal the LLC loophole. And the thing that is different about working against your governor who's in your party is that you learn really quickly how difficult it is to come up with 63 votes in the House, 21 votes in the Senate, and 1 vote on the second floor. And that's a hard process. And despite my best efforts in 2015, we received only 27 votes. We came back last year, tried to repeal also the sales tax on food, which was increased in 2015 because we were unable to close that loophole, which would have helped remedy our tax revenue issue. And so we came back in 2016, and this time we received 46 votes. So I'm looking forward to returning in 2017 so that we can get it right finally and repeal the LLC loophole.
Okay, question number 2 for 1 minute. What are your views on K-12 education funding in Kansas? How do you envision a new school finance formula? And would it include school vouchers, individual tax credits, or other voucher-like programs for private school tuition?
Thank you for that question. In the last year or so, I've taken up running, and my running partners in the morning are 2 school teachers. One teaches art in DeSoto, and the other teaches 4th grade in Shawnee Mission. And so this morning on my run, the first question that I said was, hey, we're talking about rewriting the school funding formula, which is an awesome opportunity and an awesome responsibility. As a teacher, what things are important to you? I'm a mom of 2 kiddos in Olathe Public Schools, so I know what's important to me, and that's dollars in the classroom. That includes making sure that our teachers are well paid and that they're happy in their jobs. It also means that our students, all of them, have the resources that they need. And so it was an interesting 5-mile run talking with the stakeholders, the people who are in the classroom every day with the kids. What do they need? And that's how I will move forward working on this funding formula, is to get the people in the room who have the most interest vested in the process, and that would be the parents, students, and teachers and administration.
Next question for 1 minute. In recent years, the legislature has diverted funding dedicated to the state's transportation program to pay for other purposes. Do you support dedicating sales tax revenue to specific purposes such as transportation? Or do you support all state expenditures, including transportation, should be subject to the appropriations process where legislators determine the funding levels entirely?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm in support of, and that's doing what I said that I would do. And that is going to Topeka and trying my best, within my power, within my 1 vote, to spend the state's money, your money, efficiently and effectively. And with the T-Works program several years ago is when we dedicated that sales tax directly into KDOT. And I do think it's important. A few weeks ago, I did a run on the Missouri side, and I told my friend who I was running with, be careful for potholes. We're fortunate in Kansas that we do have great roads, and it's really important that that funding stays for that purpose. Having said that, with the legislature and the governor being unwilling to bend on our tax policy, we've had to make some hard choices of where we pull that money. And unfortunately, our KDOT funding has had to contribute to that. But that's not the way that our government should be running. We should be able to balance our budget. We're required to balance our budget, and that does not include moving money unnecessarily.
Okay, thank you. Question number 4, what are your views on local control, including recent legislation limiting local government property tax revenues without a public vote?
Well, that was an interesting process, the property tax lid. I don't have a background in city government or county government, and so I got a large education from many people in this room, in fact, talking about why it's important that we have stakeholders at the table when we're discussing a property tax lid, which, by the way, we had in place until the late 1990s when that was repealed. So the process was one that by the time that this bill was passed, we did not have, I don't believe, any opposing votes to it. There are exclusions and exceptions that were specifically written into this bill so that the counties and the cities could be nimble in their spending. Conversely to that, I do believe in local control, and local control means that you and I should be able to have an input if we want our taxes raised or not. So I appreciate the intent of that. We don't always get it right in the legislature, obviously, but we did try to be very thoughtful and work with our city and county leaders to make sure that the considerations were put into place as part of that bill.
And the closing question, what is the most important thing that distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
That's been an interesting question to ruminate on as we've gone around the room. There are many things, but I think the thing that I would say distinguishes me the most is putting the walk behind the talk. I went to a forum this spring where I had a colleague of mine get up and talk about how we had to repeal the LLC loophole. It was imperative that we repeal the LLC loophole. We couldn't move forward without repealing the LLC loophole. And a week later, we voted on the LLC loophole, and guess whose vote wasn't in the yes column? It's time to put our money where our mouth is. It's time to work and say what we're going to do and then do what we're going to do. And that's something that I have accomplished both with the LLC loophole, providing that Kansans with disabilities have the ability to put money away and save for their future with the ABLE Act. I'm solutions-minded, I'm thoughtful, and I am a very hard worker, and I just appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to represent my district, my neighbors, my friends, and my family. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.